And comedy comes to us here on 2 in half an hour in the form of Alas, Smith & Jones. But first we rev up for another edition of Top Gear.
In this week's Top Gear, Honda revised their popular hatchback, the Civic, but does it meet today's requirements? Birmingham provides a venue for those keen on all forms of driving and riding. Can the Wheels project still help in cutting the crime rate? For the 70s, the car of the decade stays front-wheel drive, this time the Alfasud from southern Italy. And an unlikely form of circuit racing using the distinctly unpromising motor scooter. Well, hello and welcome to another Top Gear. And with the start of the Lombard RAC Rally only 10 days away, we look at the art, or is it the science of rallying, as our resident racing driver Tiff Needell puts his racing skills to the test on the mud and the gravel of this rally driving school. We've also got details of a competition that could put you, if you want, behind the wheel of a car in next year's rally. But we start this week with the Honda Civic, first seen at Motor Fair 87. I've been driving the first right-hand drive version, fresh off the boat from Japan, just 3 weeks ago.
The Civic has been around for 15 years now, which comes as something of a surprise when you reckon it up. But it's certainly been a winning number for Honda because they've sold over 5 million vehicles in that time. The 1987 version, which was first launched at the Frankfurt Motor Show in September of this year, we looked very briefly at the car, has been sufficiently revamped for them to call it a third-generation Civic. What they've done as far as the body shell is concerned is that by reworking the suspension, giving it double wishbones all round, they've been able to lower the car by a good 2 inches, giving it a more aerodynamic body line, a larger and more steeply raked windscreen. And they've also lengthened the wheelbase a bit to give more space for passengers, particularly in the back, and a bit more boot space. Apart from that, there are very few changes in the external shape, although, as you'd expect, of course, in a car of the 80s, they've cleaned up the outline by having flush-fitting glass all round. Now, I mentioned the extended wheelbase. That has pushed the boot space up to 9 cubic feet, enough to take 2 adult-sized suitcases, you can see. And you've got the usual arrangement whereby you can split the rear seat to take longer items. Now, the other area of major redesign has been the engine. It's all alloy, both the head and the block, 16 valves, an overhead camshaft driving new lightweight valve train. Comes in 2 versions, 1.3 litre giving 75 brake horsepower, 1.4 litre producing 90. A very compact little power unit. The inside has generally been handled very well. The new suspension has enabled them to achieve this very flat floor, plus an extra inch of headroom in the back, and it certainly feels very spacey. And the driving position is a good one, although for my money the seats run out of support at about shoulder level. But let's drive it. Well, the handling is undoubtedly very good indeed. They've done a great deal to stiffen up the car, so there's no lean on the bends even at speed. The steering is neat and precise with a very good turn-in, and the car doesn't leap about all over the place, even on rough and bumpy country roads, as is so often the case with the smaller, lighter car. As for the performance of the 16-valve engine, well, this isn't, of course, the sporty version of the Civic, the CRX, so the performance is pleasing rather than exciting. Acceleration is 0 to 60 in just over 11 seconds for the 1.3 engine car, just under 10 seconds for the 1.4. But at motorway cruising speeds, the engine's very relaxed, well within its capacity, and there certainly isn't excessive engine noise in the cabin. In fact, they've done a great deal to reduce noise of all kinds. They've redesigned the engine mounts, for example. They've used a newly developed floor pan called the dimpled floor pan, covered with a thickish absorbing layer to cut out a lot of road and engine noise, and it certainly works. The car is relatively quiet at motorway cruising speeds. What don't they like about the new Civic? Well, there seems to be nowhere inside the car to stow anything. Honda's design philosophy happens to be technology for human beings. Well, most human beings, certainly this one, use the car as an extension of their living space. But there's nowhere to stow a map or a pencil or a packet of sandwiches or a pocket calculator. Apart from that, though, the new Civic is what we've come to expect from Honda, a very good, very functional piece of motor engineering. The Honda Civic 1.3 Deluxe has a 1343cc engine producing 75 brake horsepower. Maximum speed is 105 miles an hour. The 0 to 60 time is 11 seconds, and fuel consumption averages 43 miles to the gallon. And the price, £6,850.
Now, we're sometimes criticised on Top Gear for seeming to encourage what might be called, I suppose, over-enthusiastic driving, because, of course, we show items on rallying and motorsport, and that competitive spirit may spill over into some of our road tests. Well, of course, we are enthusiastic about driving. That's one of the main reasons why we're here. But we also have a primary commitment to safety and following all the rules of the road. And over the past half dozen years or so, we've searched around for interesting approaches to solving driving problems. Well, one such approach, we believe, is being practiced by the Birmingham Probationary Service in response to the problem of teenagers borrowing cars for joyriding. Sue Baker reports.
Car theft is a growing problem. Last year, 411,000 cars were stolen, and a high proportion of them were taken by youngsters joyriding. So how do you stop them? The Birmingham project has been trying out a novel approach.
5 years ago, I couldn't have walked across here. All this was just a vast toxic waste dump overlooking Birmingham city centre. But that was before a scheme was devised to transform this into a project for disadvantaged city centre youngsters to channel their energies in new, healthier and more exciting directions with the Birmingham Wheels project.
Brainchild of West Midlands Probation Service, it was created as a wheeled adventure park where young offenders could, for example, build and race banger cars alongside members of the public. The aim was to reduce street crime, initially in the West Midlands, but eventually nationwide with similar projects in other cities. We first visited Wheels 2 years ago to see how well it was meeting its aims.
Yes, it's bringing in large numbers of kids of all ages and kinds to take part in all the activities that you've seen here. And it's serving the very roughest and most difficult of Birmingham's young people.
Does the site have commercial potential?
The purpose of the place is for local young people, and the commercial activities are secondary to it, and indeed were only envisaged as making money to pay to administer the thing for kids.
But not anymore. It's now a much more commercial concern. The original 8-acre site has expanded to 40 acres. Originally a city refuse dump, the site had no commercial value due to its toxic contents. With expansion of the site, more facilities are available. The oval banger racing area is now in use. This race organised by the local probation service. And there's a £40,000 speed skating rink and roller hockey area. And that's not the only new facility. A tarmac surface has been laid at a cost of £20,000, greatly improving the karting track. But the biggest change has been the withdrawal of the probation service from day-to-day running, now undertaken by a Wheels company with charitable trust status. Is it still meeting the original aims and helping the people it was intended to?
I think our original aims of being attractive to young inner-city people is still there, in that we are still attracting them in large numbers, and we're very pleased about that.
But you're now a commercial concern, and you're going to have to work in a more profitable way. Isn't there a danger that eventually you're going to price some of the youngsters out who this project was intended to help?
We're very aware of that possibility and that danger, but we, at the same time, are very concerned to make sure as far as possible that that doesn't happen.
But we found that some people disagree.
It's changed dramatically from being a concept where young inner-city youngsters, those that have got massive social problems and economic problems, could actually come and be encouraged to take part, use expensive equipment at very reasonable rates. It's gone from there to being put on a commercial basis.
The karting area seems to illustrate this. Local kart enthusiasts helped design and build a track on a disused car park, and Birmingham Wheels Karting Club was formed. To the club's dismay, the concession has been handed over to a businessman to run as a commercial operation. The club fear they'll now be charged as much as £4 a driver for practice sessions and restricted to racing only on 16 Sundays. Already operating on a site next to the karts is the British School of Motorcycling, running both basic and advanced rider training. They say they're paying a fair commercial rent, which helps subsidise other activities. But with expanding commercial interests, is it now adversely affecting the local groups who use the site?
There are a number of other groups that are unsatisfied, and the growing dissatisfaction has perhaps come to a head at recent times. And we have actually recently formed an association now called the West Midlands Association of Motor Projects, of which representatives of other groups like ourselves have got together with a common interest of trying to negotiate better access to the track, trying to negotiate better terms and better conditions.
There are some local organisations who are saying that they cannot get access to your facilities when they want them. They have to wait for months on end, and they feel so strongly about it that they're banding together to try and do something about it. What's your answer to them?
Well, I'm surprised to hear that, and my initial reaction would be that I think that's a reflection really of where we're at in terms of developing the site. So I think that whilst there may be a little bit of frustration around from one or two of our users, we're trying to respond, and I think they know that, and we are working very much in partnership with our groups.
The Wheels project was held up as a national example, helping to reduce crime and providing a healthy outlet for deprived inner-city youngsters. Our fear is that it is now becoming too much of a commercial operation.
Well, Sue Baker there with sentiments I'm sure we'd all endorse. Now, if you're looking for an outlet for competitive energy, you'd hardly expect the humble motor scooter to be the right vehicle to choose. Well, some people think otherwise, as Chris Goffey's been finding out.
Scooter racing is one of the fastest growing sports on two wheels, with over 400 licensed drivers throughout the UK. Years ago, scooters meant mods, but that image of tiger tails, parkers and chrome panels is changing, and these enthusiasts are aiming to get their sport on the map. But how would you get started in scooter racing?
You would join one of the 82 affiliated clubs that we have in the United Kingdom. You go from Southampton to the north of Scotland. That will entitle you to come along to a race meeting, go through your newcomers, which you've got to do. It's a form of training, if you follow me, for the racetrack, and then into racing itself in any of the 7 classes. We also promote a street class, which means a young lad who has a scooter at home in the garage, dad's scooter as there was, he can bring it along and he can join in and compete as long as the bike is MOT and taxed.
Scooter riders can enter classes ranging from standard scooters to specials and even combos. Full racing leathers and approved helmet must be worn to comply with the full safety checks and scrutineering that are imposed. The cost? Well, you could spend up to £2,000 on a second-hand scooter and any repair work needed. You need a trailer for transporting the machine, your leathers and your entry fees for a season's racing. But apart from that low cost, what is the attraction of the sport?
Well, it's very difficult to describe. Racing, I think, may be almost, and it seems to be like an instinct. Some people can do well, some people don't. The difficulty for me is maintaining concentration. At the front, it's difficult to remain motivated, and I tend to do that by thinking to myself, the next lap I am going to break the lap record, or the next corner I am going to find the fastest possible line. And by continuing to do it that way, or if someone is in front of me, I really do go for them. If there is a guy in front of me, then for that race or that lap, I hate him.
The combination class offers a different challenge. Here an engine of up to a mighty 322 cc's provides the machine power, and the sidecar and passenger call for very different skills in handling.
Well, you've got to get a good passenger for a start. He's most important. Without having a good passenger, then you're all over the place. But with a good team and a lot of teamwork, both trying together and reading each other's thoughts, then you can manoeuvre the machine left and right quite stably. But for a right-handed corner, I'd move here, turn the bars into the corner. My passenger would move behind me to transfer weight onto the rear wheel here. Now, if the front end were to drift away on the corner as I'm opening the throttle, he would conversely move his weight forward. And then if it was flicking the back end round, he would move his weight backwards and over. On left-handed corners, obviously, a different turn of the wheel there. He'll move out to transfer his weight to the sidecar wheel because that becomes light, and then he will manipulate weight and move between the sidecar wheel and the rear wheel to get drive, etc. on coming out of corners into the straights. I think mainly we don't have a lot of spectators because the sport isn't really advertised. I mean, we've got a good, cheap, competitive sport here where every man most of us do our own work in our own backyards and sheds and garages, and you can go out there and have a good day for very little. I mean, in comparison to bike racing, there's no comparison at all for the cost.
So, scooter racing looks like a very attractive way of going racing on a shoestring. And if you fancy it, get out there to the back of your dad's garage and dig out that old Lambretta. A bit of work, and you too could hit the track.
Well, now for something entirely different, because in our Car of the Decade series we've reached the 70s. We've pressed Tiff Needell into service, this time in a non-competitive role.
Wake up, Mac. I think I've got something to say.
Top Gear's car of the 70s is the Alfasud, a totally new car from a totally new factory in Naples. The 70s saw the rise of a new breed of performance car, the hot hatchback. But cars like the Golf GTI and the Escort XR3 came after the Alfasud. Originally, though, the Sud was neither a hatchback, nor was it particularly hot. So why should it be chosen? The real reason is that for a car of this size, the handling was superb. People had grown used to the Mini cornering as if it was on rails, but they didn't expect that sort of road holding out of a car the size of the Allegros or the Citroën GSs. The motoring press, they all raved about the road-holding capabilities of the new Alfasud. Autocar said it was the best front-wheel drive car yet, and they even went as far as to suggest that other manufacturers got hold of the Alfasud as soon as possible to see just how to do the job properly. Lo and behold, 3 years later, Volkswagen came up with the Golf, which was to prove the car to beat in the future. So what was so good about the Alfasud handling? Well, the very positive turn-in, felt through the rack and pinion steering, provided very stable cornering. There was limited body roll, and it was sure-footed all the way. Now we're probably used to this sort of handling, but at that time it set the standards for the future. So, how did they produce such good handling in a car of this size? Well, they started by building a brand new flat four-cylinder engine and mounting it ahead of the centre line of the front wheels. That meant that the engine could be mounted very low in the chassis, thus providing a very low centre of gravity, which is always thought to provide increased road holding. There was conventional McPherson strut front suspension, and unlike the Mini, there was a beam axle across the rear of the car, firmly located, and also providing a certain amount of rear wheel steering, if you like, almost thought of as a modern concept, but something which rid the car of some of the inherent front-wheel drive understeer. So nothing very innovative, everything had been sort of done before, and yet the geometry was very good and the suspension generated excellent cornering forces. So, why didn't such a good design concept create the most successful car of the 70s? Well, sadly, the simple reason is one of poor engineering. The Alfasud soon created rust bubbles all over the place, the wings fell off, the door sills became rusty, and really, we're very, very fortunate to have such a pristine concours example at our disposal to try. Also, the door hinges on these wide doors proved to be far too weak, and the doors soon started to snag the sills. Added to that, the 1200cc engine meant the performance didn't live up to the handling. So, by the time a bigger engine had pushed up the power by 50% and the body had been cut open to make it a hatchback, Alfa Romeo found the Golf GTI firmly established as the car to beat. The Alfasud continued into the 80s. By then, the trend it had started for hot hatchback saloons to be the car for the young enthusiast. That trend had spelt the end of the mass-produced two-seater sports car. Now, the same fun could be had driving a family saloon that was also a practical, everyday car. When the Alfasud first appeared at the Turin show in 1971, it had an 1186cc engine giving 62 brake horsepower. Acceleration to 60 took 15 seconds, and the top speed was 92 miles an hour. 2 years later, it sold in the UK for £1,399. Current values would be around 400, but the very rare good examples could be worth 10 times that much.
Now, November is Lombard RAC Rally Month, the sporting event that draws more spectators than any other in this country, attracted in part at least by the chance to see superb car control on some of the worst road conditions you can imagine. But what kind of skills does it take to drive well at rallying, and how do they compare with those required on the racetrack? A question given added point this year by the fact that Derek Bell, the current World Sports Car Champion, is having his first go at rallying, and everyone's asking, how will he get on? Well, a couple of months ago, Tiff Needell came here to Bill Gwyn's International Rally School in the Midlands to see what it was like to swap the tarmac for the loose. And Tony Mason, our rally expert, came to see how he got on.
The disused airfield in Northamptonshire bears little resemblance to the forestry stages of the normal British rally. At least the tyres are less intimidating than trees, and that's a comfort when Bill Gwyn's sitting alongside some pupils who really haven't got a clue.
One that springs to mind is the guy we set off in first gear, and I sensed straight away that we weren't going to make the first corner, and we spun in 20 yards. And he kept doing that the whole day, not because he was wild, he just had no idea how to drive the car.
Did you have to tell him the truth?
Well, we helped him a little bit, but we had to tell him at the end of the day that it wasn't wise for him to go running.
Thought of fitting dual controls or anything?
Well, we do have a little aid on our side of the car which does help us calm the wild people, which helps restrict the engine revs quite a bit, and I use that quite often to calm people down.
For Tiff Needell, this was his first experience in a proper rally car, albeit a conventional rear-wheel drive Escort. So how did he think he was going to shape?
Oh, I'm not sure how I'm going to shape. I expect I'll be disastrous, but basically, you know, I know I can drive a car, but I'm here, you know, to learn the art of rally driving.
When you're ready, we'll go.
Okay.
Right, away you go. Go into second gear, and keep it in second gear around the corner. Now back off the power a little. Now powering. Now right hand lock. Now back off the power a little.
Do you believe, therefore, that you can learn to drive in competition?
I'm a great believer that even at the highest level, at Grand Prix level, that maybe they should have coaches, as Bjorn Borg maybe has a coach for tennis. I think you can always learn. I don't think anybody can say they know everything. I think you should always look, listen and learn.
Brakes, power, second gear quickly to the left. Now to the right, not too much power. Back off a little bit. Okay, now go. Get first gear quickly. Straight on.
I'd like some trees. I think it might make it a bit more realistic. I think I might get a bit carried away. It all looks a bit safe here, whereas rallying is very much about having those trees all around you and the dangers. But maybe it's nice to learn in safety.
And a few 100-foot drops we should have perhaps provided.
Oh, no, that would really put me off. Trees, maybe.
Hang on to that wheel. Second gear, quickly. Get it back on the stage. Keep off the power. Keep off the power until you got it back under control.
I think we're in the trees there, aren't we?
I think we took half a dozen trees with us.
How did it go?
Well, I don't know. Maybe you ought to ask Bill that. But I certainly enjoyed myself. But I think Yeah, the approach was probably, I tended to go a bit over the top, and one thing I noticed with Bill was very much the economy of movement, the economy of steering and of throttle use, where I was blasting from here to there and everywhere and catching tyres and this and that and the other, but very enjoyable.
Now, you've had Tiff Needell here today. How did he fare?
Well, extremely well. I mean, he suffered from the normal racing driver problem at first of expecting the car to go round corners by turning the wheel 1/4 of an inch. But once he got over that handicap, he was a very quick learner, and just really as I'd have expected a man of his experience to be. You give him a car with 4 wheels and he'll make it work. It's just that he's got to adapt the new technique of rally driving on the loose surface and forget his tarmac driving.
It is very much the anticipation idea of setting the car up much earlier for a corner than you do in racing. Racing, you go in deep to your precise turning in point, turn in there, get on the power. Here you need to set the car into the corner well before the apex, otherwise you're going to miss the apex because the car travels so far sideways. And then just being economical in power, not punching in too much. It's very easy to sit there on a big opposite lock and think I'm going quick, but with Bill you see the economy of movement. Really that's it, the economy of movement on the loose.
It is tight into the left, then some power, a little bit of power to the right, don't let it run too wide, and round to the left, smooth power here, play with the steering a little, then round to the right.
There's a great thrill in controlling a powerful car on a loose surface, but once a pupil's initial exuberance is tamed, it's down to the slog of learning detailed technique. Bearing in mind the fun of his first hour in the Escort, could Tiff contemplate following Derek Bell and taking up rallying?
Well, yes. I mean, not really as a career. I think I always prefer the sophistication, as I might say, of our circuit racing, of motor racing itself. But certainly the challenge of all forms of four-wheel motorsport, you know, attract me.
What do you think of rally drivers in general as a breed?
Well, they seem to be a pretty good bunch. They're certainly very brave, and they certainly show amazing car control. But obviously, it is a different technique to circuit racing.
Why don't racing drivers generally adapt to rallying?
Well, I think they have a very easy time on the circuit because they have boards which tell them when to put the brakes on, and the circuit is basically always the same lap after lap. And they get into this situation where it's their thing, and they can do it very well. To move into rallying means an awful lot of effort and a lot more physical work, and the fact they're going to have to be out of bed a lot more.
Now power it. And to the right. Good, well done. That's much sweeter. Keep it going. Brakes on hard. Second. Oh, Tiff, I think we're back in the trees again. I think we went into that hairpin at about 30 miles an hour too quick.
Well, Tiff Needell there obviously enjoying himself, no doubt thankful that these tyres aren't actually trees. And of course anyone can come here to get the benefit of expert tuition, provided only they can foot the bill. And it costs a great deal more, of course, to run a car competitively to earn the chance to enter a major international rally.